Yo, what's going on, guys? We got the last division standing prediction video, and today I am going to be doing my Atlantic Division standings. I have gone back and forth over the past week. Even like 2 hours ago, I made one final change to this. This is by far the most controversial and toughest division to predict because there's a bunch of teams that are on the rise, a couple teams that might finally come crashing down. It is anyone's guess. The standard deviation on this division is going to be absolutely insane. But without further ado, let's dive into it. Let's start with last place, which I think everybody should probably have the Montreal Canadiens. I think I can probably pencil this one in as being correct. I have them having 69 points, which is a little bit worse than they were last year. And I just look at this team. It's not that they got worse this offseason. In fact, they might actually be a better team just from internal growth through some of their young guys. But they didn't really add it. They didn't really add anything. They obviously traded for Petrie, then traded him immediately. Casey DeSmith they traded for in that trade, then immediately shipped him out to Vancouver. So you look at the Canadiens, it's still a rebuilding team. They have some veterans in that forward core and defense core, like a Mike Matheson, like a Dvorak, a Brendan Gallagher, but not really high-level players. They're really relying on their young guys to take that next step. Obviously, Caulfield. Will Caulfield finally get 35 plus goals in a regular season? That'd be a massive success. Caulfield can break the 35 goal mark. Suzuki's still pretty young. Can he finally get to 70 points? It's all about some of their young guys hitting milestones with this team. And Slavkovsky again, after having just 10 points in 39 games. Can he take that next step? They're all focused on the young guys right now. The team results don't really matter. For the Montreal Canadiens, it's all about seeing progression within their young guys. So who really cares that they're in dead last? Montreal Canadian fans will probably tell you heading into this season, finishing last is probably what they're aiming for as long as their young guys develop properly. In seventh place, I have the Red Wings with 81 points. I think they had 80 points last year, so about the same. And again, I think that they also improved this offseason. They got Alex DeBrincat. They brought in JT Compher. Hole they got as well. That's not really an ad, though. But I think they are a better team. But the Yzer plan hasn't really come to fruition yet, and it's not really expected to come to fruition yet. A lot of their young top picks are still either in the AHL or with their junior teams. For them, it's all about establishing chemistry between Larkin and DeBrincat and getting Raymond in the mix this year. Lucas Raymond, after having 57 points in his rookie year, dipped down to 45 this year. If that first line can cook, Larkin gets 80 plus points. DeBrincat goes back to 40 goals. Raymond breaks the 60-point mark. I think that would be a pretty successful season in terms of their forward core. The rest of their forward core is pretty solid. They got some decent depth, but it's not a lot of those young guys. It's not any playmakers like JT Compher as your second line center is okay when he's on the Colorado Avalanche and they have so much offensive talent that he can just play reliable two-way defense. But they're going to need him to actually provide some offense this year that it's not really going to work. And in terms of that defense core, I am pretty low on it. You look at it, Wallman and Seider is one of the best pairs in the entire NHL. But then you got Chirot, Hole, Petrie, okay, but he's like 35 now. He could fall off. And Oli Mata, it's a very disappointing bottom two pairs of that defense core. So I think it overall will be a pretty below average defense core. And then in goal, you got Ville Husso and James Reimer. That's also a bottom five tandem, in my opinion. I don't think Ville Husso is that good. He had a fantastic 30-game stretch with the St. Louis Blues. Is he the worst starting goalie in the NHL? No. Petr Mrazek and Kaapo Kähkönen exist. But in my opinion, he is pretty easily bottom 10. So goaltending, pretty bad. Defense core below average. Forward core average. And again, if they were in like the Pacific or Central, I think they'd be like a mid to high 80-point team. But considering they are in the Atlantic, which is going to be utter war, I have made 81 points, and I think that's about fair. In sixth place, this might get some people mad. I got the Buffalo Sabres with 88 points. I slept on them last year, and I kind of am sleeping on them again. I was obviously entirely wrong last year. Let's see if this happens this year. They're still a very unproven team. And this summer, honestly, they didn't really add anything to make me believe that they're ready to fully take that next step. They're heavily relying on internal growth, which should happen over the next 2 to 3 years. Next year, will they take this massive internal leap? I don't really think so. Goaltending is going to be massive for them. It was pretty below average last year. Craig Anderson was decent. UPL, Comrie, not very good. Devin Levi is the name to know, probably the biggest X factor on the Buffalo Sabres. He had a 905 and a 294 in his 7 games last year, but he had a 3.1 goals saved above expected. So analytically, he was fantastic for them down the stretch. Is he ready to step into a 50-plus game thing in the NHL after playing college hockey the past 2 years? Maybe he is, but again, that is a massive leap of faith to have in your young goalie. Most young goalies don't take starter roles until 24 or 25. He's like 21 years old, so I can't pencil him in. I know some people having him like cruising to the Calder or being a Calder finalist, maybe even beating Bedard. I can't say that yet. He was fourth on my Calder ballot just because he's going to get a ton of games, but relying on that guy and even their backups, UPL and Comrie, I don't think are proven or that good of goalies. So I think from a goaltending department, it could be good. It could be good, but it also could be bottom 10 in the entire league. So I'm not ready to commit to that. In terms of defense, obviously Rasmus Dahlin's a stud. Owen Power should take another jump. Is he a legit number 2 on an actual playoff team next year? I'm not 100% sure yet. Matthias Samuelsson, solid defensive defenseman. And then beyond that, it's like Henry Yukaharu. I think I got that name right. Henry Yukaharu, below average, bottom pair, maybe second pair guy. They have Eric Johnson now, I believe. He's a bottom pair guy. Connor Clifton played very shelter minutes in Boston. So I think the defense core outside of Dahlin and Power, it doesn't really excite me. Overall, it's a pretty average defense core. Forwards is where maybe they can make up a lot of that. They were 6th in the entire league in goals for last year. Tage Thompson, Tuck, and Skinner is one of the best lines in all of hockey. Dylan Cousins potentially becoming a legit 35 and 40 kind of guy for 75 points. That'll be massive for them. Does a guy like JJ Peterka take that next step? Does Zach Benson pop onto the scene? Like, as impressive as it is that Zach Benson is making the team, I don't really think that speaks to how great the Buffalo Sabres forward depth is, because if you are an actual playoff team, unless you have a Connor Bedard or an Adam Fantilli, a rookie probably shouldn't be making a team. And I really like Zach Benson. But I didn't think that he'd be walking onto the Buffalo Sabres. Peyton Krebs, I'm kind of out on at this point. Kyle Okposo, just a 4th liner now. Casey Middlestat, solid mid-50s. He can be your 3rd line center or like your 2nd line right wing. But overall, outside of that 1st line, again, they're going to be relying on a lot of internal growth that I'm not that sure is going to happen. Once they get Jack Quinn back, that'll be massive. I think he can be a 50-ish point guy. But I think the forward core, above average. Defense core, average to below average. And goaltending is such a mystery that with these 5 teams ahead of them, 4 of which I know for a fact can play much more consistent and I can rely on them more to be better. Right now, I have the Buffalo Sabres as an 88-point team. This could absolutely backfire, but I'm going to go against the grain on this. I feel like they're America's team right now. I love to be a contrarian, so I'm lower on the Buffalo Sabres. In 5th place, with 92 points, I got the Florida Panthers. Florida Panthers are tough, man, because Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad, Bill Zito said that they're out till mid-December, which puts them at missing around 30 games. If it was one of them, I would probably have them around 95, 96 points and in the playoffs, considering it's both of them, and they're going to be relying on like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Mike Riley, Gustav Forsling. Their defense core is, to start out the season, is probably bottom 5 in the entire league, and it's going to be bottom 5 for 30 goddamn games for more than a third of the season. And that's just when, like, you said, that's like earliest potentially. Again, they had like torn labrums. That is no joke. They suffered it in June. There's a chance they're not back till mid-January, early February, which would absolutely sink them. They have the offensive firepower in order to keep them in games, keep them around 500 until those guys get back. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see how Kachuk plays coming off a goddamn broken sternum. He's good to go, but that was like a 2 to 3 month injury, 2 to 3 month rehab process. Alexander Barkov, will he return to maybe when they won the President's Trophy and he was like 105 point pace instead of last year? His goal scoring numbers absolutely dropped. They're going to need him to step it up. Sam Bennett, out right now, but he's only going to be out for like a week. Physical 2nd line center. I really like his style of game. A guy like Sam Reinhart had a bit of a dip in points last year. Still fantastic defensively, but they're going to need him to go back to being around point per game. And Ken Carter Verhaeghe score 40 goals again. I'm not too sure. A guy that's a really big X factor for them, in my opinion, is Anton Lundell. He had like 45 points in 65 games as a rookie. That absolutely shot down to 32 points in his sophomore year. He needs to provide that depth scoring on that 3rd line. They can have one of the best 3rd lines in all of hockey, especially with Eetu Luostarinen, and I think even Evan Rodriguez might be on that line. Losing Anthony Duclair is definitely unfortunate. He didn't really provide that much last year in the regular season because he had that torn Achilles. But that's another depth piece that they lost. But I think Evan Rodriguez hopefully can fill that void. And then in terms of goaltending, Bobrovsky, I don't think that it's unrealistic to expect that he's going to ball out like he did in the playoffs. If he can give them even 908, 910 goaltending, that would honestly be not surprising, but that's what they need from him. They don't need him to be 2017 Vezina winner Sergei Bobrovsky. I'm not sure that we're going to see Spencer Knight that much this year, just because he was obviously dealing with that serious OCD issue. Basically didn't play all of last year. That's going to be tough, especially starting him in the AHL. And if the Florida Panthers start a little bit slow because of those injuries, bringing him up in those high pressure situations, I hope it works out, but that might be risky. And honestly, although they did make the Stanley Cup Finals, and it was a fantastic run, they beat the shit out of the Leafs in the Hurricanes, but they almost lost in like 5 games to the Boston Bruins. Not that that really matters. It didn't happen, but I think people are penciling them in to make the playoffs and forgetting that last year they had pretty decent health for the most part and barely squeaked into the playoffs. So now you're not going to be starting without your top 2 defensemen and 2 very elite defensemen. Then the drop off is massive. It's going to be very interesting to see how they start off this year. I have them just missing the playoffs by 3 points. In the last wild card spot, I'm not that confident in this, but I'm going to stick by it. I actually have the Boston Bruins. I'm shocked. I genuinely shocked myself because their forward core is so mid. It's so uninspiring. It's literally Pasta, Marchand, DeBrusque. Then it's like Charlie Coyle, JVR, Trent Frederick, Matthew Pontra. Like it's not good. It's a below average forward core. But when you look at them defensively, the defense core is still fantastic. They were able to keep their top guys in Matt Grzelcyk, Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo, and Hampus Lindholm that they had at the start of last year. Or they didn't even have McAvoy at the start of last year. But that top 4 is one of the best top 4s in the entire NHL, as well as Kevin Shattenkirk, I think was a good, low-key, cheap ad. And then the goalie tandem is still extremely elite. I don't think Olmark's going to ball out like he did last year, but you can basically pencil them in for like 9-15 goaltending most likely. So I just think that they're so defensively sound, and I think Jim Montgomery will find a way to just grind out 3-2, 2-1 wins with this team. When you think about it, 135-point team last year, I have them having a 40-point drop-off, which I do think that they are significantly worse. So for them to miss the playoffs, they're going to need like a 50-point drop-off. I still have them dropping off 40 points. I don't like this, but I can't bet against the Boston Bruins. I told Mark Cousy like 2 weeks ago they're not making the playoffs, but as I just keep on diving into it, they're so goddamn consistent. They're going to find a way. They're just going to find a way. We just need to live with the Boston Bruins making the playoffs every single year and just get over it. Another team that I have in 3rd place making the playoffs every single goddamn year, Tampa Lightning with 97 points. Similarly to Florida, Big injury. Vasilevsky's missing about the first 8 weeks of the season. Puts him at around, I believe, it's like a mid to late November. So he's going to miss around 20 to 25 games. It's not quite as bad as the Florida injuries, but still very much not ideal. When you look at Andrei Vasilevsky, he has been a workhorse for this team. But I think in a weird way, them not having Vasilevsky, they won't be better. They'll start off slow, don't get me wrong. But it's going to give this team a sense of urgency that they have severely lacked in previous years. Last year was their worst regular season in a while, but it was mainly because by mid-December, late December, they knew that they were playing the Toronto Maple Leafs in the second round, and they knew they were most likely going to be on the road. They didn't really care. Now that they're right off the bat going to have this pressure, Nikita Kucherov might go for another. He's thinking in his head, I can get another heart if we cruise to a playoff spot and I ball out with no Vasilevsky. They are going to be turned up to 11. And I personally believe, although he might not be a top 5 defenseman anymore for me, I think Victor Hedman is going to bounce back in a big way. He is getting absolutely dogged by casuals this year right now, in the sense that people are acting like he's not even a top 50 defenseman in this league just because of one bad analytical year. Yes, he is getting up there in age, but I think the two-headed monster of Sergachev and Hedman will be really effective this year. I know they don't play together, but having both of those guys on your blue line is going to be fantastic. They brought in Calvin DeHaan, who I think is a good bottom pair guy to play with Chernak. That's going to be a good pair. And when looking at them in terms of forwards, yes, they are a little top heavy. Maybe they're going to roll out the top line of Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point. That is going to be like the best line in all of hockey if they do, but it is pretty top heavy. I like the third line that they built this summer. They went with Connor Sheary, Connor Sheary, Nick Paul, and Michael Esamont. I think that can be a very underrated third line. Those are 3 pretty solid players. Nick Paul, solid defensive third line center. Connor Sheary has been pretty elite offensive play driving, and Michael Eyssimont honestly impressed me against the Leafs this past year. And Tanner Jeannot. Will Tanner Jeannot finally bounce back after having a pretty down year? He had 24 goals and 17 assists in his rookie year for 41 points in like 78 games. Then this most recent year, he had 18 points in 78 games. He has a scoring touch that he just was not able to access last year. So if Tampa can even get 17 and 17 out of him, that is going to be massive for their depth scoring. So as long as they can survive till November, which I think that late November, I think they will be able to do that. I still think they're a playoff team. Again, similar to Boston, I just can't see a world. I'm not going to bet against the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm not going to bet against John Cooper because they've been so consistent over the last couple of years. This is going to be by far their strongest test yet, and people are the lowest that they have been in years, but I think that is the time where they're going to prove them wrong. On to second place. Second place, I got the Ottawa Senators. Obviously, there's been some news. I made this take like a month or two ago. I'm sticking by it. There has been some things that has discouraged me. Don't get me wrong. Josh Norris is still not healthy. Probably going to go on LTIR. Probably going to miss the first 3 weeks of the season. That is a massive yikes considering he was a 35-goal guy in like 65 games the last time he played for the Ottawa Senators. Not having him is going to stink for them. But hopefully that means that they'll be able to sign Shane Pinto and then figure like a Matthew Joseph trade out to then bring back Josh Norris. But I look at this team and I do think they addressed a lot of their issues. You look at the defense core, having a full year of Chychrun. Now that Sanderson is broken out, they're a far better defense core compared to heading into last year when Jake Sanderson was a true rookie. We had no idea what he was going to bring. We thought it was basically just Chabot and nothing else. It was a desolate wasteland of Chabot, Brancham, who looked like a bust. Brancham had a bounce back year last year. They had a brutal defense score heading into this year. I think it is average, above average, and maybe even good if Chychrun plays to the level that I think he's capable of. In terms of goalies, Anton Forsberg has to stay healthy. He killed him last year because they had to go to like Mad Sogard or whatever, Mad Sogard, in order to play like serious NHL minutes, but the tandem of Forsberg and Korpisalo, neither of them are top 15 goalies in the league, but they're probably both top 25 when healthy. Forsberg has a 9.12 in his last 2 seasons. Korpisalo had a 9.14 last year and absolutely balled out on the LA Kings. So in looking at them, goaltending has been a massive problem for the Ottawa Senators in recent years. They have not been able to get even like 900 goaltending the past 2 years. So if Forsberg and Korpisalo can even give them, similarly to the Florida Panthers with Bobrovsky, 908, 910, that is going to massively improve this team. And then the forward core, Stützle, Tkachuk, Giroux, one of the best lines in all of hockey. Second line hopefully should be something like Norris, Batherson, Tarasenko. And then even that third line of Pinto, Gregg, and Kubalik, that's a solid third line. That is a very underrated third line because I think Ridley, Gregg, and Pinto are going to have very good years, especially Pinto building off a 20-goal season. So they are 3 lines deep, and then the fourth line of Matthew Joseph probably be gone, but Matthew Joseph, maybe Parker Kelly. Fourth line doesn't really matter, but I think they do have actual forward depth this year compared to last year. Obviously, once Norris went down and they didn't have Kubalik or Tarasenko, they were severely lacking forward core depth, and they obviously addressed that this summer. So I think they are a far more complete team overall than compared to last year. Pierre Dorian did a very good job addressing his issues. They just need to get off to a good start. If they start even 6-4, that's going to be massive for their confidence. They usually absolutely shit the bed the first 2 months of the season. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully DJ Smith. And the other thing is DJ Smith is fully coaching for his job. If they get off to a shit start, he's definitely getting canned. The new owner is not going to put up with that shit. So there is even more pressure on the Ottawa Senators this year to perform with the new owner. And I think they finally do. And then in first place, pretty easily running away with the division by 7 points, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their forward core is very deep this year, obviously running Bertuzzi and Domi on the 2 left wings with their usual the big 4. And then even that fourth line of Nyes, Midden, and Yarncroc, I think is a very good third line. Nyes, Calder hype. I don't know if he's going to get that much Calder votes considering Bertuzzi and Domi are playing ahead of him, but Nyes could give you around 40 to 45 points. Fraser Minnan has really impressed me in the preseason. He could be a maybe sneaky 40 to 45 point guy. It's going to be a very good checking line. And even Yarncroc last year, I think, was around 35 to 40 points. So that third line checking line is going to be very effective for them. And then the bruisers that they have on their fourth line, like Ryan Reeves, it's really going to set the tone. It's really a well-balanced forward core. Defense core, good. It's definitely solid. There's definitely some question marks in terms of John Klingberg defensively. Absolute black hole. Can Sheldon Keefe find a way to mask that? That's going to be massive for this team. Timothy Liljegren, can he finally take that next step and become a legit borderline top 4 defenseman in this league? I think he kind of got chewed out towards the end of the season, and especially in the playoffs, kind of got exposed a little bit. And then Mark Giordano, they just need him to not fall off a cliff. They just need him to be a responsible bottom pair defenseman, not make any mistakes, play a reliable 17 to 18 minutes a night. He was a little bit inconsistent last year, but in prior years has still been pretty rock solid, so they need him to step up to that level. I think Morgan Riley's going to have a bounce back year, go for 55 to 60 points, and then Jake McCabe's solid both ways, especially even strength, and TJ Brody's locked down defensively. I think it is a good defense core overall, and then the goalie tandem of Samsonov and Woll, above average goalie tandem. Samsonov, obviously, .919 last year. Very impressive. Kind of out of nowhere. Kind of was deemed the bust before that. And Joseph Woll, when he did get the call up, whether it was the regular season or the playoffs, played very well. So I think the goaltending also improved compared to Matt Murray last year, who was really just battling through injuries and inconsistent as hell. So I think the Leafs are, on paper, kind of a better team than last year. Not like significantly better, but probably a better team. And as a result, I have them at 109 points. The Atlantic is going to be utter war, so maybe not as many points as last year. But when looking at the Leafs, very solid team. But overall, Leafs, Sens, Lightning, Bruins, Panthers, Sabres, Wings, Habs. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? I lost my mind making this list, so I really want to know, do you think I'm completely off the mark here? Are the Sabres going to win the division? Are the Senators going to finish with 82 goddamn points? Knowing my luck, that's possible. But I want to hear from you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. See you in the show tomorrow, 11 a.m.